Good day and welcome to our SharePoint Bootcamp for the winter of 2021. Just gives you an idea where we are because this stuff changes frequently. Just before we get really into this looks like a death by PowerPoint. It isn't. We have a lot of demonstration, but there's about 10 slides we got to get through to get you up to speed. We're going to assume you know virtually nothing and you need to understand some of the terms and some of the placements of things. So, by the time you're done this course, you should be able to understand SharePoint. You should be able to use SharePoint. And you should be able to do more than just really basic administration of SharePoint. Let's start off with what SharePoint is exactly. A lot of people think it's some sort of pretty version of OneDrive. It is not. OneDrive, although they're very related, OneDrive is for the files that you are working on. And yes, you can share them with other people, but it's really focused on you. SharePoint, on the other hand, is for the group you are working with. It's a repository, a place to put stuff for communication and collaboration. And something we need to explain before we go any further at all is the name. This product used to be installed on-prem. Inside your company. But that has largely died out. SharePoint is now run, a little exaggerating to say exclusively, but very heavily online. So this is officially called SharePoint Online. But we're just going to call it SharePoint because SharePoint on-prem, isn't really a thing anymore. What problems does SharePoint actually solve? Well, the biggest thing it solves is search. The idea is that over the last 25, 30 years, weak IT managers in particular, have allowed file shares to become unmanageable, especially in large companies. And it can be very hard to find the files you're looking for unless you already know pretty much where they are. And that's because staff have been allowed to create folders that have little to no meaning. So how many times have you run into a folder on your corporate network labeled John or Excel? That's all just useless. So what Microsoft has said is, well, we're not going to be able to fix that, so let's move into something else that provides a much better way to search and find the files you're looking for, so you don't have to rely on that file structure so much. Microsoft was so bold with this in the late 2000s that they heavily promoted the idea of scrapping file servers altogether and just putting all of your files into SharePoint. I very much would not recommend that, but if you're small enough, you could do it. So as we've said, search is the first problem it solves. It lets you go through vast amounts of data and files and find what you're looking for pretty quickly and pretty easily. The next thing it solves is the IT cost. There's no longer a need to constantly involve IT. Users can do most of the work in SharePoint themselves. Those are the things it's solving today. The thing SharePoint is going to solve in the near future, and Microsoft is already working hard on it, is how to determine experts. Microsoft's using its artificial intelligence algorithms, applying them to SharePoint data, and they're figuring out who the expert is in a given field. You know that the director is Lucy, and the Lucy is supposed to be the person that knows everything about whatever the topic is. But in practice, she might not. And so it would be great if you could ask the system, who's the person that knows the most about matrices or knows most about the Johnson project? And that is coming. Parts of it are already here. Now, the SharePoint structure. This is something that people get really confused on, and it's not very hard. So we're going to go over this and explain each level one by one. There's really 4. So we'll start off with the top level site. That is the top of the tree. There is none higher. And below that, you can have sites. So the top level site is called the top level site. The next level down are called sites. And this is what most companies have. Well, most small companies anyway. You have a top level site that most people never interact with. And there are all kinds of sites that they do interact with, like a project site or a team site or a marketing site or a department site or whatever. And each one of those sites can have multiple subsites. And each of those subsites can have more subsites and so on and so forth. We're not going to kill that horse anymore. So let's just be clear about this. What you got is a top level site. And then you've got your sites. And then you've got your subsites. That's that. Now, each of these sites can contain lists and libraries and web pages and web parts and app parts and all kinds of wonderful things. Now, we're going to go over all of those in just a few minutes. We're going to do it in demonstration form, not death by PowerPoint here. But you might remember I said that there are 4 levels in the SharePoint structure. And we're only showing 3, the top level site, sites, and subsites. Where's the 4th? Here it comes. There's a thing called the site collection. This would be, if it's your first one, would be site collection 1. You can rename this to anything you want, but it would be site collection 1. But you could have multiple site collections. It doesn't have to stop at 2, you could have all kinds. For most applications, especially in small and medium-sized businesses, this just adds complexity that you want to avoid. Most people should stay with one site collection and build out from there. But it is possible to have multiple site collections. Okay, so now what do we do? Well, we're on to demonstration time and domination of the earth. So let's get to it. So the first thing you want to know is how to get into SharePoint. It's not very hard if you have an Office 365, now what's called a Microsoft 365 subscription. You access almost all of your systems by going to portal.office.com. And you sign in if you haven't already. Now I have 2-factor authentication, which I'll put a link to in the top right-hand corner because it's really easy to set up in Office 365. But I have already signed in, so for me, this is just rolling through. In your case, you may see a login screen, so just log in. Now in the left rail here, you'll see all of your programs, Word, Excel, Power, blah, 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 blah. And at some point there, you'll see SharePoint. So click on SharePoint, and this will take you to, guess what? Your top level site? Nope, it isn't. This is simply a listing of all of the sites you have access to. If you want to get to the top level site, you go to your domain and then the server, which in this case is SharePoint.com. So let's just remove that from the address. And that is my top level site. This is an older site, so let me show you how older sites get edited. If you only have new sites, you can ignore this next 30 seconds to a minute. But if you have older sites, this will be relevant. Let's click on this and select Edit. You'll recall we mentioned WebParts. Well, I can select Insert, and I can select WebPart. So let's go down to Community and Join, and I'll select the Add button, and it will just add it. And you see here, this type of web part cannot be added to this site because this web part requires the community feature, which this one doesn't have. So I can just get rid of that. And I'll click Save. And it'll be back the way it was. Hopefully you get the idea there. Web parts are just little bolt-ons, little plugins that you can snap into your site. We'll go over this in much more detail in just a few minutes. Okay, let's go work at the site level and play with some regular sites. So the easiest way to get there is to go back to your Microsoft Office home, click on SharePoint, and there's the list of sites that I have access to. You can see on the left here, I've got a bunch of different filters so I can see what I'm to see, and I can create site in the top left corner. Let's show you that very quickly. And let's say this is a communication site. There are many different templates that can get used. These are the 2 defaults now. The old ones are legacy, and I wouldn't suggest you use them. Let's use a communication site. I'll just call this one QQQQQQQ. And if I clicked finish at this point, this would show up in the list. This is not what I want, so I'm just going to click cancel. But it would build it, and I don't want to waste your time doing that because it does take a minute. So yeah, we'll cancel it. And you can see that I have these 4 sites already up and running. And they're just goofing around once. This is my demo stuff. This is not my real stuff. So let's go into one of them. We'll click on this first one, Ian Test 2021. And you can see it's got a web page, and a calendar, and some other items. I'm going to click home in the back on the left here. Now I'll go into test plan 2, which is just some more junk, right? There's no data in here I'm particularly worried about. So you can look at it all you wish. Now here we're going to use this to demonstrate what the layout is. We'll start on the left and work right. This bar on the left is called a quick launch. And what's on quick launch? Internal things. These are links that go off to other parts of this SharePoint site, primarily. It can be used for other things, but that's what it's intended for. That's what's usually there. Then there is a rail along the top called the top links bar, and that is not showing on here because I don't have anything in it. What that's for is for links primarily to external sites. So things like maybe your public website or a competitor's website or Bloomberg or who knows what. And then along the top here is the SharePoint navigation pane. And it has what's called the waffle, which is this. I call it the 9 dot, but most people call it the waffle, and that gives you access to all of your Office 365 stuff. It has a master search. It has your profile information, which is completely unrelated to SharePoint. Well, I shouldn't say it's unrelated, but it's not core to SharePoint. This is for all of your Microsoft 365 items. And most importantly, it has this cog, which we're going to go over a little later on. But that is where a lot of settings are. These are settings that are often used by not so much administrators, although administrators use it too, but often this is used by people that are building their own SharePoint sites, staff. Okay, so now we've got the layout. You understand the overall structure. You understand how to get into SharePoint. So now what can you do with it? Well, we're going to go over the SharePoint components. And here they are: web pages, lists, document libraries, web parts, and app parts. And we're going to go over each one of them. So let's get started with web pages. I can create a new web page just here by clicking New and Page. Well, let's say we don't know what we're doing. So we'll go through, I'm new at this. We'll go through the tour and it'll just walk us through it. Okay, now you have to choose a name and a template. So let's go. So I will choose this one, mostly because it's pretty. I'll click Create Page, and this will keep walking us through things. And there it is. You do have to call it something. If you try to publish this in the top right-hand corner without a name, it won't work. So I'll just call this Demo Test Ultimate Page. It could be anything at all. And you can put text in, you can do whatever you want here. And I'm going to now just finish this by clicking Publish. So web page, pretty much a web page. It's popped up this little information saying, hey, let people figure out how to get to your site. No, I don't need to for this because this is just a demonstration. Now let me go back to home and let's get on to lists. Lists are very interesting, but again, some people confuse lists with SharePoint's biggest function, which is the document library. So let's explain it. Let's go create a brand new list here. So I'll click New List. And the way to think of a list is as an open Excel file. It is not the file itself, it is the data in the file. And this is the primary difference between a document library and a list. In a list, the data is actually stored inside the SharePoint SQL database backend, whereas a document library, which we'll show you in a moment, is just a repository, just a place to put files. So let's create an asset manager list. And sure, we'll just click use that template. It doesn't make a difference. I'm going to call this PC Asset Manager. You should have a description. I'm not going to. And this is key. Show in site navigation, which is on the left here in the quick launch. So I'll click Create. And you can see it added it. Now, I can select New. And let's add an image. Oh, let's add that one because that's fun. Asset tag, 75, blah, blah, blah. Status is reserved. Manufacturer, oh, that's definitely Fabricam. It's the model, it's the classic 2540, blah, 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 who cares? So you get the idea here, and I'm just simply going to click Save here. I'm going to skip through adding 2 more so that I don't take up your time. All right, so I've got 4 of these now. I said I was going to add 2 more, but I added 3 more just so the list is a little more interesting. And let's show you some of the things you can do. Something I don't think I've been clear about that I really need to be clear about is, in this case, we're using a template where it already had a list ready for us with all of the columns and things. You don't have to do that. You can create this from scratch. But they've got a whole pile of these templates already ready with the correct columns and things in them, so why not? And you can also go in and edit these templates so that, for instance, the status column is required. So let's, for instance, go in and modify this, well, the first one I did here, right? The evil guys. We'll click on that. And you'll see that asset tag is a little asterisk. That is required. The manufacturer isn't. I could go change that. Now, I'm not going to, for the sake of this conversation, to get through it faster, but you get the idea. You can also edit in grid view, which lets you edit and add things, instead of just doing one column at a time, you can edit the whole thing all at once, just like a proper Excel worksheet. So I can say that this, asset tag, that was wrong. That's 11111, and that's on a tablet. Why, that is a laptop. And my Ford Fusion, let's say that that's that number, and well, that's not a printer, that's actually a tablet. Now, here's the quirk. If I just click out of here anywhere else, it won't save this. I have to click Exit Grid View. Now the changes have been saved. And you may have noticed the scroll bar at the bottom here goes over, and there's all of these extra columns that I'm not particularly interested in. Well, how can I change that? It's not very hard. Click the drop down where it says All Items and select Edit Current View. And in Edit Current View, here I can change the name of the view, and I can turn things on and off. So if I don't care about the manufacturer, I can turn that off. I don't care about the ID, I don't care about the label setting, the order number previous, I don't care about any of that. I'll leave that off, and let's leave modified. Let's also put on created by, and you'll notice these column numbers. As soon as I click OK, all of the ones with check marks these are going to get renumbered in the top position. But let's say I wanted color to be number 1. So I can go here and I can say 1. And you can see that number 1 automatically changed to 2. If you're getting a little confused, just hold that thought, because you'll see it in a second. It'll make a lot of sense to you. Okay? Now, I can also change the sort order for this, the default sort order. I can add filters. There's a lot of things I can do. I can change the colors. So you get the idea here. I'm just going to skip through the rest of this, and I'll click OK. There we go. Now you'll see I put color as the number 1 column, right? And there are the other columns that are selected, and you'll notice now that the scroll bar doesn't have as much stuff in it because I got rid of them. All right, so that is a list. A list, once again, to keep it straight in your head, is simply an Excel type worksheet. It is not the Excel file, it is the contents of the file, the columns, and all the metadata around that, as well as the actual data. And that is not stored in a file, that is stored directly in the SharePoint backend in the SQL database where all of this stuff is kept. Now, if I want to get this into Excel, it's not a problem. I can select Export and select Export to Excel. Now watch what happens, because it's not what you're expecting. It doesn't create an Excel file, it creates an iQuery file, IQY file, Internet Query. Watch what happens when we open it. Okay, so it says, well, opening stuff from somewhere else can be dangerous. Yep, except I know what this is. And there is the data. And I can manipulate it any way I want. So I could say, I want only the laptops here, or the tablets here. I could file, save as a different file name if I want. I can actually save it as an Excel file to get it into standard Excel file format so it can be sent to someone else. All right, so let's leave lists alone. I hope you get the idea. You can create them, you can edit them, you can modify them, you can export them. There's lots of good things you can do with them. And the primary difference between a list and a document library, which we're about to show you, is that the data for a list is actually stored inside of the SQL database. It is not a file. It is the actual data, the columns, the metadata, and the data in the columns. Okay, so let's go back to home and explain what a document library is. Firstly, every SharePoint site that you build will have a document repository, a document library already built in. They come with it whether you like it or not. You can add to this and you can move files in, but I'm going to show you how to create a new document library on the off chance that you wanted more than one. For instance, this might be for your whole company, we'll say it. So these could be just generic documents, but let's say you wanted one just for the legal department. So let's click Home, and you select New, Document Library, and I'll call this one Legal Docs. Okay? And I do want it to show in the navigation pane on the left, and I'll click Create. And in a second, there it is, it shows up. Now, I can just drag files in, and it doesn't make any difference what kind of file. So I'll drag a graphic file that I put in recently. I'm just going to drop it in here. And it will automatically upload, and there it is. And I can click on it, and it will preview it. Pretty nice. Okay, let me click the X in the top right-hand corner here to go back. And off the screen here, on another screen that I have a list of Google AdWords locations. And I'm just going to drop that on as well. Just drag this Excel file. Now here's a fun thing. Let's go edit this file. And I can just click on it, and it will launch the full version of Excel. In fact, this is a web version of it, and you think, well, the web version is not the full version. In fact, it's more full than the desktop version. 2 years ago, Satya Nadella announced that Microsoft will release all of its new Microsoft Office features in the cloud versions first. So it's cloud first, desktop second. So this should have more features than what your desktop version has. So you can do everything you'd like with this. Now, I've started my phone up so that you can see one of the really cool features of working with data that's stored inside of SharePoint. You can share it with other people and they can edit it at the same time. So let's just do that. So you can see I'm in here and I'll add, I, right? Who cares? Got something there. Now, I will go into my phone and I will launch the Office app. And I have to wait a minute for it to sync up, but it will sync. There it is. Now you'll notice that there's this Google AdWords locations in Test Plan 2 and Legal Docs, and I could grab it from there, or I can click, say I didn't see it in there though. Say it was something that, I'd looked at a while ago. I can select the folder in the top right-hand corner, and then go down to my SharePoint site, and go into Test Plan 2, Legal Docs, and there it is. And you think, well, as soon as you try to open it, it won't work. Oh, yes, it will. Not only will it work, but I will be able to see the other person working. So you can see the III is already updated, and you can see here, now, I'm the same person, Ian Matthews and Ian Matthews, so this is a bit silly, but although it does prove the point, you can work on a file at the same time here. So watch this, I'll type in Y, and then within a sec, see that? It just shows up live on the phone. Isn't that amazing? Now on my phone, I will change this Australia, I will delete it. And you can see it's gone. Now we're going to go over other ways that data can get shared in SharePoint, so it's not just locked into there, but this is one that's very, very useful. Document sharing and live collaboration. Very, very nice. So I'll close this now. I don't need that open anymore. And I'll close this. The next thing I can do is select New in the top left-hand corner, and let's create a new PowerPoint. And as I've already explained, well, you can see how fast this is, but as I've already explained, the web versions are now the full versions, and the desktop is now the limited old version. Pretty neat. You'll notice it automatically saves, but I want to rename this because having a presentation called presentation is not particularly useful. So I will say save as, let's just rename this one to Test PPT. All right, and you can see it's going to save where? It's going to save directly in Plan 2, Legal Docs. There we go. I'll just press the Enter key. And now I'll go back to my, I'll just maximize this so you can see more. And I will go back to my Test Plan 2. And you'll see, let me just refresh this page. There it is, Test PPT. I mean, great stuff. The third coolest thing about document repositories is version history. So let's go look at that. Let's go into this PowerPoint, and I will make a change to it. New slide, and the slide, there we go. And for the heck of it, I'm going to assign it that template, and there we go. Now that's that, and now I don't have to save. You'll see at the top here, it always says saved. So I'm just gonna get out of this. I'm just gonna close it because I just don't need this open anymore. There we go. And you'll notice it says now it's been updated a few seconds ago. But I realize now that, wow, that was a big mistake. And either the work I did or the work somebody else did, it is bad. And we need to revert to a previous version. It's not a problem. Click the ellipse. Go to version history. Now I could click on it and open it, or I could just click the down arrow and select restore. And it says, you're about to replace it. Are you sure you want to do that? Oh yeah, I'm sure. Here we go. And you think, well, I've blown up the path. No, I can still go to the one. It created a new version for me. So look, when I go to this PowerPoint now, amazing, I got to roll back. Wow, that's cool. Another great feature is the recycle bin. So let's get out of here. I'm gonna close this. And I'll go here and I'll say, I'm going to delete this. I just don't want it anymore. Yeah, it's garbage. And then you go, oh my God, it's a week later and you realize that, yeah, you really needed to not delete that. Well, there's the recycle bin. And if you've ever worked in a corporate network, you know that if you delete a file that's on the network, you almost certainly have to go and request a restore from IT. And that's a pain for everybody. You can do the restore yourself. So let's click on the recycle bin and see what's in there. Oh, well, in this case, it's just the one file because I've just been goofing with it. But I can click on this and I can select restore, which I will do. And now I'll go back to my legal documents and it will be there. And that recycle bin keeps files for 93 days. So you've got a long time to figure out if you need them or not. The fifth really cool thing about this is alerts. So I can select this ellipse at the end, and I can select Alert Me. And look at the options I get for alert. I can receive an email or a text, whichever I would choose, when anybody changes something, or when somebody else changes it, or whatever. And I can have it sent to me immediately or every week. I'm not going to because I don't want that. I'm just going to click cancel. But if you're worried that somebody's making a change, or you really need to know when somebody's made a change because you've requested that John work on this, and John is notorious at not doing it right away, so you want to know when he has done it, well, you'd send yourself an alert. Really great. Now there are 4 other things we're going to show you very quickly here that are not as interesting, but certainly useful. One of them is pin. So I can click the ellipse at the end, and I can select pin. Where's pin? There it is, pin to top. And it will put that PowerPoint at the top, and it will even give me a preview of it. Let's pin this one as well, just for fun, because it has some different data in it. And you'll see, boom, right? So these then are just so readily available to me. Next thing is add a column. I can go here and I can select, let's say I want to add the single line of text. I can put in here, why did you change? And I'll just click save. And now I can click on here and then select the I. And in the properties, I can put, I've now got this why did you change column, and I can put in here updated to 2022 pricing. Press enter. Now, just so you know, this sometimes takes a minute or two to actually show up here, but it will show up. And the last big thing I want to show you in this document repository is automate. So automate is something that not a lot of people use, but it's really, really interesting. Let's show you an example of it. So I'll click on Automate, and we'll go to Power Automate, and we'll create a flow. These are triggered events. They're things that happen when somebody does something. It's much like the alert that I was showing you earlier. But I could have, when something new is added, let's click on this Send a Customized Email when a new file is added. So I can go into here, and this will take me into Flow. And if it's your first time in, it gives you this walkthrough, and I'll click Get Started. I can now go through this, and I can edit it. I can make whatever rules I would like. We're not going to get into this because it's too weedy for this course, but you get the idea that the flow stuff is really neat. Web parts and app parts. What's the difference? Well, the difference is web parts look primarily at things outside of SharePoint, like say the weather or a stock ticker or whatever else, and app parts look at lists and document libraries inside of SharePoint. So let's show you how to play with this. I'll click the word edit here, and I will click the plus to expand this, and I can add in these new blocks of things. So for the heck of it, I'm going to add in one column, just a simple thing. Now I can click the plus here, and I can select a YouTube video. That's a web part. And I can select add video, and over on the right side here, it's going to ask, what video do you want? So I'll go find one. And I'm going to paste that in just like that. And I don't want it to work at a particular time, although I could set it to. I could set it to start, 5 seconds in or 10 seconds in, but I'm not going to. There it is, and now I will click Republish. The page has already been saved, but I'll click Republish, and boom, now that comes up. Next section. How does SharePoint tie into other systems? Well, this is really neat. This is just going to blow your mind. On any computer that I've got, I can select Sync on this document library as an example, and it'll come up and it'll say, hey, we're trying to open up OneDrive. If you don't already have OneDrive set up, it will do it for you. You just sort of click through and agree with it. I live with OneDrive, so mine's already set up. So I'm just going to say open, and I will click close down here, and you'll notice my OneDrive, it automatically just kicked off. And what this lets me do is work on files offline. It lets me work on them on my computer, whether I'm connected or not. Let's take a look. These files should be syncing by now. There they are. They are syncing from test to legal docs. You think, well, where exactly is that? That's a good question. Let's show you. There's my File Explorer, and look what just showed up. This little building, which is the SharePoint icon, and I can expand it, and look, I get these documents. These are the documents, and you'll notice that there's a cloud icon, meaning that's not on my computer right now, but I can double click on it, it will instantly download, and I can modify it. So I'm not using my desktop version of PowerPoint. So I'll go into Design here, and I'll choose that layout now, and I'll add 2 new slides, and just because I'm a moron, I will duplicate this slide. I will move it to the end here, and then I will change this. There we go. All right, and there we go. Now I'm just going to close. You'll see at the top here it says saving. I don't have to save, it'll do it automatically. So I'll just press the X, and it'll go away, and you'll see the arrows here. It's syncing. And if I go back to my cloud environment, and I bring up that PowerPoint, look at that, already updated. It's all but instant. If I go back to my File Explorer, I can see, oh, but you said, these files with the cloud, they're not on my computer. And, well, I want to work on them all the time. I want them to be available all the time. Not a problem. You can either right-click on any folder or any file. I'll just choose this file. Say this Google AdWords file I always need to have on my computer. I can just right-click on it. And now this is Windows 11, so if you're running Windows 10, your list will look a little different, but there's always keep on this device. In Windows 10, it'll look more like this. And I can select always keep on my device. Watch, that will immediately start syncing, and boom, it's down. I've got a copy of it. So I can work on this while I'm disconnected on an airplane or in Aruba on the beach. I can also create new files here. So let's launch Word, just to be different. And let's go to a blank document, and I'll just start typing stuff. This is just junk, right? And now, and again, this is my full desktop version of Word. And now when I click File, Save, or Save As for that matter, I have a few choices. I have my OneDrive and my SharePoint stuff. Now look at this. I can go right into my SharePoint sites. And I want to save this into Test Plan 2, and I want to save it into legal documents, and I want to call this Ian's Desktop Word Doc Test for Demo, right? And save, and watch. By the time I get out of this, it will be already, it's not, you'd say, well, it's not there. That's because I haven't refreshed the browser. So I'm just going to press F5, and it's already there. Amazing. The third way that data can get used from SharePoint is through mobile devices, which I've already shown you. So I'm not going to do that again. The fourth way it can get used is from apps. So proprietary apps, most likely that your company has written to manipulate data, they can call this data and they can display it in lots of different ways. Another way that data can get out of SharePoint is through Teams. So this is not hard to understand, but it is sometimes confused. All new teams in Microsoft Teams automatically create a SharePoint site. But all SharePoint sites do not create a team. So let's just show you that. So let's look at my teams. And you can see I've got two teams here, Test 2 and UR Tech Team Channel. What's missing is one that I just created. Say I wanted to have a Teams option for this big bad deal test site. Well, it's not hard to do. You just click on Add to Microsoft Teams at the bottom here. And it says, you sure you want to do that? Yep. And let's just use the recommended here, Add to Teams. And this will take a minute, but not that long. Pinning resources in the tabs, blah, 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 blah. And now you can see I didn't even have to refresh it. There it is. And I can go into Files. And it will take a second because this is happening, you know, on the fly. And I can go into Documents and I can see those files. How slick is that? And the last thing I'm going to share with you before we get into the admin portion of this is how to share these things, with these things being the entire SharePoint site or, you know, or any document for that matter. Simply to click in the top right-hand corner and add members. So let's say I wanted to add Daly Matthews. She's a great kid. There we go. And let's say I wanted to add Bryn Matthews, my other kid. And they work in my company. And if I click Save, this will generate an email that gets sent to them that says, hey, you now have access to this. Click here and open it up. Or they could surf to their Microsoft Office portal. And when they click SharePoint, they will automatically see whichever one I shared with them, which was the Test Plan 2. I could also share just an individual file. So I could go to, well, let's go to that legal docs library that I created. And I could say, I just want to share this Google AdWords document. So I'm going to click on that and select Share. And here I could put in anybody's address at all. It doesn't make any difference. I'll put in Calgary@yahoo.com. If I click Send, that person will have permission to edit that file. Now, you'll notice that I can change that permission up here by clicking on this, and I can say, no, I only want it to go to that specific person. So in other words, the default is anybody with that link can edit it. Well, I don't want that. I only want it to go to specific people, and in this case, I don't even want them to be able to edit it. So I'll just click apply. And this person will get an email. It says, hey, this person's outside of your organization. And you can click send and they'll get an email. Or you could just copy the link, or you can launch it through Outlook. So this is really easy to do. Okay, so now we're going to get into the admin portion of this. And we intentionally left off with that sharing and permissions bit because we're going to go over permissions first. And we're going to make this really simple. The key thing to remember here is the word waterfall. Permissions on your top level site flow down to all of the sites, which in turn flow down to all of the subsites. Now you can break the inheritance. That is the phrase that is used, so that things from, say, your project site do not flow down into your subsites. So let's say I wanted to change the permissions on that legal docs folder so that only some people could get access to it and not the defaults that are from the top level site. Easy to do. Select site. There's a lot of ways to get to it, but this is an easy way. Select site contents and find the library in question, which in my case is legal docs. Select the ellipse and then select settings. And then here it is, permissions for this document library right here. And you'll see it says, well, hey, this is inheriting things from test plan 2. Stop inheriting. And as soon as I do that, it will copy all of the permissions that were there before. Test plan 2. We'll go back to home. And let's look at other items that are of interest in this cog. So if I click on the cog, in particular, I can go to site information and I can change the name, or I can change the graphics. So I'm going to call this now Big Deal Test. There we go. And I'll leave the site description as the same, but watch up here. Watch up here. Just changes. It's also important to know whether anybody's actually using this, because sometimes you're just viewing it and they're not making changes, but so you don't know if it's of any value at all. So you can click on the cog and you can select site usage. And you'll get some ideas as to, how much it's been used and who's been using it over various periods of time. And let's go back to home. And we'll have to wait a second for the cog to show up. It's not instant. This will appear for everybody, but your list may be different depending on what permissions you have. So let's go to change the look. I want to change the theme to something darker. Let's use dark yellow. There we go. Save. It's just easier on the eyes. And if I go to the SharePoint start page, take a look what I can do here. I can go into the cog and I can select site settings. And remember, because of the way this is set up, these waterfall down. And we will look at site collection administration, which is right here. And we will look at the storage metrics to tell us where our data is being used. So you can see I've got about a terabyte of space here, and I'm not using very much at all. In fact, the system's using it. The system's using it all. But you may see, for instance, that your lists, and we can drill into that. Let's drill into a list, is using a lot of storage or not. So these are tools that a standard sort of lower level admin would use, but there are more. And let's show you where those are. They're not actually in SharePoint directly like this. Where they are is back in your portal. Bring it up again. I'll just go to portal.office.com. It'll log me in automatically. Bingo bongo, I'm there. And then I can click on, because I'm an admin, I can select admin. And there are several places where administration of SharePoint is dispersed. The first place, you click Show All, and you'll see SharePoint here. If you don't, by the way, just click All Admin Centers, and you'll see it here. But most people will see it here, and you could pin it if you wanted. So let's click SharePoint. And there's not a huge number of things you could do here. But let's show a couple of things. Let's click Active Sites, and you can see how much storage is being used. Again, I can filter this. I can see that I've got a little over 1 terabyte in total, and I can see what's using it. I can also go into restore sites that are completely gone, and you can see that they're kept for 93 days. Under policies, there isn't very much here. So I can say, well, I don't want my users sending SharePoint content to anyone. They have to be going to only people inside my organization. I don't want them going to people outside. That's a very common setting to have. Although it does defeat a lot of the purpose of having SharePoint, but that's valuable for some. Also in access control, you can see I can set things like how long it takes for somebody to time out, or who has access. So I can set only people from specific IP addresses, and I can just punch them in here, which is, it's going to be a maintenance hassle, but it's very useful as an admin. Also, under settings, you can see here that there are a number of policies that I can set. I shouldn't call them policies, they're settings. So I can say, well, let's go into site creation and see what the settings are there. I can say, well, I really don't want it to be in this sites folder. I'd like it to be somewhere else. I can also set how much space they can steal. So this one's set to 25 terabyte, which is the absolute max. And that is a terrible idea. So I can reduce that. I can also set the default time. But you can see there's not a huge amount that I can change in here. Another place where there are important SharePoint settings are back in the portal. Go to security. Do I see security here? There it is. But I also see it here. I can get to it either place. And what's in here are retention policies in particular. And that's important. What you want to do is click on Informational Governance and select Retention. And this will take you out to a different admin portal. At least it used to, yeah, there it is. It's still taking us out. Now it's taking us to compliance.microsoft.com. Take a look at what's here. And this will take a second to load. Oh, there it is. That came up faster than it sometimes does. And I can select New Retention Policy. I'll call it whatever I want. Next. I would like this to be a static policy. And I want my SharePoint sites. I only want this to apply to SharePoint sites. Next, I want it to apply to all of them. And I want it to dump anything that has been sitting for 5 years since it was created. No, that's not a good idea. Or from the last time it was touched. So if somebody hasn't touched this thing in 5 years, yeah, I want it gone. So I want to delete the items completely. I can also set retain items forever if this is something I was very worried about. Okay, so you get the idea. Hey, if you found this video useful, please give us a thumbs up down at the bottom. It really helps with the Google algorithms, and the big red subscribe button is even better. Now, if you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. We'll get back to you, or somebody else will. And you can always get a hold of us at www.urtech.ca. That's urtech.ca. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day. Bye-bye.